The room went silent when Mr. Carter, the new owner, slid the paper across the desk toward me. I picked it up, feeling a strange mix of nerves and anger building inside my chest. My hands shook slightly as I read the new contract. Right there in black and white, it said it clear as day, a 40% pay cut. After 14 years of giving my blood, sweat, and tears to this company, after missing birthdays, anniversaries, even my own son's school plays, this was my reward. A brutal, sharp pay cut, with no warning, no discussion, just a piece of paper shoved under my nose. I looked up at Mr. Carter, who sat there smiling like he had just offered me a gift. My heart pounded so hard it felt like everyone could hear it. I swallowed hard, stood up slowly, and said the words that changed everything. I decline. Here's my notice. Mr. Carter's smile froze on his face. He hadn't seen that coming. Neither of us had any idea what would happen next. Before all of that happened, life was pretty steady for me. My name's Matt, and I'd been working at this family-run furniture company for what felt like my whole life. I started when I was 22, fresh out of trade school, thinking I'd just be there for a couple of years while I figured out what I wanted to do. But year after year, it felt like home. The owners, Mr. and Mrs. Robinson, treated everyone like family. We'd have company picnics every summer, big holiday parties in December, and when my twins were born, they sent the biggest basket of baby gifts I'd ever seen. It wasn't just a job. It was a second home. I worked my way up from sanding tables to designing full custom sets. I got pay raises almost every year, bonuses when the company did well, and handwritten notes from the Robinsons thanking me for my hard work. It wasn't a fancy job, but it made me proud. My wife, Sawa, and I bought our first house thanks to that job. We built our life around it. I had no reason to think anything would change. Then, about 6 months ago, the Robinsons decided it was time to retire. They were getting older and wanted to move closer to their grandkids. They broke the news one Friday afternoon, holding back tears as they told us they had found a buyer who promised to honor the spirit of the company. I remember clapping along with everyone else, but something deep down inside me felt off. I should have listened to that feeling. Mr. Carter came into our lives like a hurricane. He wore flashy suits and drove a brand new Tesla that he parked right in front of the office doors. He shook hands, smiled big, and told us he had big plans to take the company to the next level. At first, we believed him. Maybe some new energy would be good. Maybe things would get even better. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. Within the first month, 2 older workers were let go, people who had been there even longer than I had. Carter called it streamlining. Then he started changing the materials we used, cutting corners to save costs, even though it hurt the quality we were known for. He brought in his own managers, people who didn't know anything about woodworking but knew a lot about spreadsheets. The place started to feel cold, lifeless, not like family anymore. Still, I kept my head down. I thought if I worked hard enough, showed my loyalty, things would turn around. I didn't complain when they canceled the summer picnic. I didn't complain when they stopped giving out bonuses. I kept designing, kept building, kept hoping. Then came the day I was called into Mr. Carter's office. It was a Tuesday, gray and rainy outside. I remember because I had almost called in sick that morning. I was fighting a bad cold, but I didn't want to look weak. Big mistake. Mr. Carter didn't waste time with small talk. He slid the paper toward me, like some bad movie villain. "We're adjusting some salary structures," he said casually. "Your new salary will reflect the direction we're taking." That's when I saw it. The pay cut. 40% gone. Just like that. I thought about my mortgage, my kids' school tuition, the medical bills we were still paying off from Sarah's surgery last year. A 40% cut would sink us. I'd have to pick up a second job, maybe sell our house. And for what? So Mr. Carter could save a few bucks to pad his numbers. I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "I decline." My voice was steady, even though my hands were trembling. "I'll be giving my 2 weeks' notice." That's when everything started spiraling out of control. Mr. Carter leaned back in his chair, smirking like he had a secret. "You're making a big mistake, Matt," he said, voice low and threatening. "You'll regret this." But deep down, I knew I wouldn't. What I didn't know yet was just how bad things were about to get. Walking out of Mr. Carter's office that day felt like stepping off a cliff. I didn't have another job lined up. I didn't have a backup plan. All I had was my pride, my name, and the fear sitting heavy in my gut. When I got home that night, I sat Sarah down at the kitchen table and told her everything. I expected her to panic, to cry, maybe even be mad at me. Instead, she reached across the table, squeezed my hand, and said, "We'll figure it out. We always do." Hearing those words gave me a little spark of hope. The next 2 weeks at work were the slowest of my life. Word spread fast that I had given notice. Some co-workers congratulated me in secret, telling me they wished they had the guts to leave too. Others avoided me like I had some kind of disease. Mr. Carter barely looked at me, but I could feel his eyes on my back whenever I walked through the shop floor. It was like he was waiting for me to slip up, to give him a reason to kick me out before my notice was up. Still, I kept my head high. I finished every project I had started. I cleaned up my work area better than I ever had before. If I was going out, I was going out with my dignity intact. Every evening, I scoured job boards, sent out resumes, and made phone calls. It was exhausting, but I couldn't afford to sit still. One night, after putting the twins to bed, I got a call from an old friend named Jake. We had worked together years ago at a smaller furniture shop before I moved on to the Robinson family. Jake had heard through the grapevine that I was leaving. "Matt," he said, "I'm starting my own custom shop. It's small, just me and a few guys right now, but I could really use someone like you. Interested?" My heart almost burst out of my chest. I told him yes without even thinking twice. It wasn't going to pay quite as much as my old salary, but it was enough to keep us afloat, and more importantly, it was a chance to work somewhere that respected the craft, not just the bottom line. My last day at Carter's company finally came. I stayed late, making sure everything was perfect before I left. As I walked to the door for the last time, Mr. Carter stopped me. He had that same fake smile plastered on his face. "Good luck out there, Matt," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're gonna need it." I just smiled back. "We'll see about that." I stepped out into the crisp evening air feeling lighter than I had in months. It was over. I was free. Or so I thought. The next morning, my phone blew up with messages from my old coworkers. Mr. Carter had called a company-wide meeting the minute I left, and what he announced sent shockwaves through everyone who worked there. But the real surprise came when Jake called me that same afternoon, his voice shaking with excitement. "You're not going to believe what just happened," he said. "You're not going to believe what just happened," he said. And honestly, I didn't. Jake's voice crackled with urgency. "Matt, you're not going to believe this. The moment you left, Carter announced that he had made a last-minute decision to cut everyone's pay by 10%. No one saw it coming." I stood there in stunned silence. 10%. My mind went straight to all the workers at that company, hard-working, dedicated people like me who had been there for years, some even decades. They didn't deserve this. They didn't deserve the sting of a pay cut after being loyal for so long. And now, here I was, out of there, looking at a future that, despite everything, seemed brighter than the one I'd left behind. But Jake wasn't done yet. That's not the worst part, Matt. The worst part is, Carter made it clear that this pay cut was just the beginning. He's slashing benefits too, starting next month. He said something about increased efficiency and tightening the ship. The whole company is in chaos. The anger bubbled up inside me. I'd spent 14 years building my career at that company, making it my life, just to be told I was worth 40% less than I had been. And now, all of those employees I left behind were getting hit with even more damage. But there was a twist I hadn't seen coming. I stayed at my phone, my hand shaking. "Jake, you said you were starting your own custom shop, right? Do you still need help? Because I think I might know someone else who needs a new job." The silence on the other end of the line felt like it stretched forever, but when Jake finally spoke, he wasn't just excited. He was panicked. "You're not going to believe it, Matt, but Carter's been offering some of the workers at the company a special deal. He told them they could keep their jobs if they accepted a 20% pay cut instead of the full 40%. But here's the kicker, he's been making them sign non-compete agreements." A non-compete agreement. That was an all-out power play, and everyone who signed it would be locked into an awful deal that would keep them from even considering working at places like Jake's shop. It was a trap, one that Carter had carefully set up to prevent anyone from leaving or competing in his dwindling business. It felt like the world was closing in on all of us. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was furious. I thought I had left the place behind. But Carter's reach didn't end with me. He was dragging everyone into the mud. "Matt, I can't explain it all right now, but I have a plan," Jake said. "I need someone I can trust to help me with this. And I think you're the right guy." The weight of everything that had happened in just a few days was starting to settle on me. But then, my mind shifted to my family. Sawa, the twins. Could I risk going down this road? Could I leave behind everything that was safe and secure for something unknown, something that could be dangerous? Just as I was about to tell Jake I'd think about it, another call came through. It was from a number I didn't recognize. "Hello." I answered, my voice tight. "Matt, this is Mary from HR at Carter's company. You don't know me, but I heard you left, and I wanted to warn you. You might want to watch your back." My pulse raced. "What are you talking about?" There was a long pause. Then she whispered, "Carter's planning something big. And you're at the center of it. I don't know the details, but I think he's coming after you." I froze, the blood draining from my face. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, the line went dead. I stayed at the phone, my heart pounding in my chest. The line had gone dead before Mary could explain what she meant. "Coming after me." I muttered to myself, what could Carter possibly be planning? And why would Mary, a stranger to me, be the one to warn me? I sat down on the couch, trying to gather my thoughts. The situation was getting more complicated by the minute. First, the 40% pay cut, then the non-compete agreements, and now this mysterious warning from someone inside Carter's company. Something wasn't right. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was nearly midnight. I had no idea what to do next. I couldn't go back to that job, not after what they had done. But the idea of just walking away and letting Carter get away with it didn't sit right with me. If I didn't take action, how many more people would he ruin? I picked up my phone and dialed Jake's number again. This time, it went straight to voicemail. I left a brief message, telling him to meet me at the diner tomorrow morning. I needed to talk to him in person. I had a feeling things were about to take a serious turn, and I didn't want to be caught off guard. The next morning, I dragged myself out of bed and put on the first thing I could find. I didn't have the luxury of time anymore. My mind was racing with questions, but I needed answers I could only get from Jake. When I walked into the diner, I spotted Jake right away, sitting at the back booth, tapping his fingers anxiously on the table. His expression was serious, which wasn't like him at all. I slid into the booth across from him. "Jake, what the hell is going on? I got a weird call last night from someone at Carter's company. She said he's coming after me. Do you know anything about this?" Jake leaned in, his voice low. "Matt, I didn't want to bring this up before, but I think Carter's been doing more than just cutting pay and laying people off. He's been using some pretty shady tactics to get rid of people, especially the ones who might know too much about his plans. I think he's been building a case to frame you." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What? Frame me for what?" Jake hesitated, looking over his shoulder like he expected someone to be listening. "Look, Carter's been skimming money off the top for months. The whole company is a house of cards, and he knows it's about to collapse. He's been blaming others for the mistakes he's made, and I think he's using you as a scapegoat." I shook my head, unable to process the implications of what Jake was saying. But I didn't do anything. I've been loyal for 14 years. Why would he do this? Jake looked me dead in the eye. "Because you were the one who stood up to him. You were the one who wasn't afraid to speak your mind, to question his decisions. You were one of the only people who could have stopped him, and he knows it. So, he's going to try and bury you, Matt. And if he can't do that, he'll make sure you'll never work in this town again." My mind was spinning. The walls were closing in on me. It felt like everything I had worked for was slipping through my fingers. And to make matters worse, my family was still in the dark about all of this. How could I keep them safe if Carter was really going to do whatever it took to destroy me? I looked at Jake, determination setting in. "What do we do now? How do we fight back? Jake leaned back, his face serious. We hit him where it hurts, his wallet. But first, we need to gather proof of everything he's been doing. If we can find evidence of his fraud and shady dealings, we can bring him down. But it's going to take time, and it's going to be dangerous. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Sawa. Matt, I need to talk. Something's not right. I frowned and read the message again. What was going on at home? I had to go. I need to go. My wife, she's worried about something. Jake nodded, but I could see the concern in his eyes. Be careful, Matt. This thing is bigger than we thought. My mind was spinning. The walls were closing in on me. It felt like everything I had worked for was slipping through my fingers. And to make matters worse, my family was still in the dark about all of this. How could I keep them safe if Carter was really going to do whatever it took to destroy me? I looked at Jake, determination setting in. What do we do now? How do we fight back? Jake leaned back, his face serious. We hit him where it hurts, his wallet. But first, we need to gather proof of everything he's been doing. If we can find evidence of his fraud and shady dealings, we can bring him down. But it's going to take time, and it's going to be dangerous. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Sawa. Matt, I need to talk. Something's not right. I frowned and read the message again. What was going on at home? I had to go. I need to go. My wife, she's worried about something. Jake nodded, but I could see the concern in his eyes. Be careful, Matt. This thing is bigger than we thought. I left the diner in a daze, my mind racing with the gravity of what Jake had just said. If Carter was really planning to destroy me, I had no choice but to fight back. But I couldn't do it alone. I needed help from people who weren't afraid to take on someone like Carter. When I got home, Sarah was waiting for me at the kitchen table, her face pale and tense. The moment I walked in, she looked up at me, her eyes filled with worry. Matt, I don't know how to say this, but something's wrong. I think Carter is spying on us. I froze. What do you mean? Sarah hesitated before showing me a letter she'd found in our mailbox earlier that morning. It was an envelope, with no return address, just my name written on it in bold, blackened. Inside, there was a single sheet of paper with a message typed out. I know what you're planning, Matt. Stay out of it, or you'll regret it. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just some empty threat. Carter was coming after me, hard. The letter in my hands felt heavier than I could have imagined. My heart raced, and I felt a deep pit of dread in my stomach. Whoever sent this knew something about my plans, something I hadn't told anyone. I glanced at Sarah, who was staring at me with wide, fearful eyes. Matt, what does this mean? Are we safe? She asked, her voice trembling. I set the letter down on the table, my mind working overtime. Carter wasn't just playing a game anymore. He was crossing a line, threatening me and my family. This was no longer just about a pay cut or a job. It was about survival. I don't know, I whispered, my voice hoarse. But I'll make sure we're safe. I promise. Sarah wasn't convinced. You can't do this alone, Matt. We need to get the police involved, or at least some sort of protection. This is getting dangerous. I shook my head. Not yet. Carter's too powerful, and the police won't take us seriously unless we have evidence. We need to hit him where it hurts, just like Jake said. I wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing, but there was no going back now. The letter, the threats, the warning from Jake, it all pointed to one thing. Carter wasn't just a bad boss. He was a criminal. And if I didn't stop him, no one else would. I turned to Sarah. I'm going to take the fight to him. I'll gather the proof I need, and I'll bring him down. But I need you to trust me. Sarah nodded, though her eyes were still filled with concern. I trust you, Matt. Just promise me you'll be careful. Please. I kissed her forehead, trying to reassure her, though I wasn't sure I believed my own words. I will. I promise. Over the next few days, I worked in the shadows, gathering every scrap of evidence I could find. I pulled up old emails, went through financial records, and pieced together a damning trail of Carter's illegal activities. Every time I found something new, I felt a sense of power. Carter had been playing dirty for so long, but now the tables were turning. Then came the day I decided it was time to confront him. Armed with the evidence, I made my way to his office, my mind set on one goal: taking him down. As I walked through the glass doors of his building, I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me. This was it. Either I was going to win or lose everything. I walked straight to the receptionist, trying to mask the nervousness in my voice. "I need to speak to Carter." She looked at me for a moment before nodding. "He's expecting you. Go ahead." I took a deep breath and walked into his office. Carter was sitting behind his desk, a smug look on his face. He didn't even bother to stand when I entered. "Matt," he said coolly, "I see you decided to show up. I guess you realized the inevitable." I didn't waste any time. I slammed the folder full of evidence onto his desk, my hands shaking with anger. "You've been stealing from your employees for years, Carter. I've got proof. And if you don't step down and fix what you've done, I'm going public with this." Carter's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of fear. But he quickly masked it with a laugh. "You think anyone's going to believe you, Matt? I own this company. I control everything. You're nothing. You always were." I stood my ground, meeting his gaze. "I've worked for you for 14 years. You don't get to treat people like dope and get away with it. This ends now." For a moment, there was silence between us. Then, Carter leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "You really think you can just walk away from this? You have no idea who you're dealing with." But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had the truth on my side, and that was all I needed. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I presented the evidence to the authorities, and it wasn't long before Carter's empire started to crumble. Investigations were launched, and the press caught wind of the scandal. People who had been afraid to speak out against Carter finally came forward, and soon, he was facing criminal charges for his fraudulent activities. As for me, I left the company that day and never looked back. My 14 years of hard work had led me to this point. And though it had cost me my job, it had also freed me from the shackles that Carter had put on me and my colleagues. I was finally free to start over, to build a future that was on my own terms. But just as I thought things were settling down, I received one last message from Jake. His text read, "Carter's not done yet. Keep your guard up." I couldn't help but smile at the irony. After all this time, after all the pain and loss, Carter was still out there, fighting to maintain control. But I wasn't worried anymore. I had fought back. I had won. And now, no matter what Carter tried next, I was ready.